Roll call?
Yes, Mr. Chair. All right, Dr. Kelly,
That's me. Here.
Mr. McKenna,
Here.
Ms. Olson,
Here.
you have a quorum. Also in attendance, Attorney Ennis.
Yes.
All right, let's take a look at the agenda. And I think, did we need to add that last minute thing that came in?
Sure, I'll move to add the request that just came in at the end there as item 5D on the consent agenda.
All right, sounds good. And D, were a couple of these things going to be time indicated? Time certain?
Yes. Yes. The Belden request for advisory opinion and also the, I think I called it 49th State Fund.
Okay,
So
and
both of those are time sensitive.
okay, yes, and as I recall, Belden's coming at 9:30. Is that right?
I think it's reversed. 9:30 is the 49th State and at 10:30 is Belden.
Okay, 9:30 for 49 State, and then 10:30 for Belton. All right, so let's keep that in mind. All right, good. With those edits, do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move to approve it.
Sorry. Some tea went down the wrong. I'm going to mute myself first.
Hearing a strenuous objection to the agenda, we'll just.
Marcia, cough if you second that.
Yeah, can you second that? Yeah, oh, good. All right, so second. All right, all in favor.
I swear.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Okay, agenda passes. If folks can take a look, holy cow, minutes from December 5th and December 19th. Wow, back in a different world. If you haven't had a chance, get people take a look at those, see if anything.
I took a look and they seemed fine to me.
Yeah, they looked good to me too. All right, do we have a motion to approve those?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Second.
All right, all in favor, aye.
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 Opposed, no. All right, very good. Hey, let's move on to our consent agenda. Did people have time to review this, or would people like time to scan through it now?
This is Dee. I did not have time to review it. But I think my role here is if someone has a question, I will go to that matter.
Sounds good. Well, let's take a couple minutes then, and let's just since this is the consent agenda, we're supposed to, I think, vote on this all at once. So let's just go through and see if there's anything that anyone wants to pull out of this, anything that kind of like strikes you as something you'd like to talk about separately.
I guess just the one that stuck out to me that I just didn't know enough about was the one from Miss Savina, who's on the Zoning Board of Examiners and Appeals. And it looks like the relationship is with Arctic Solar Ventures. And I just didn't know if there was any way that the Board of Examiners and Appeals could in some way approve a project that would give her a pecuniary interest. You know, I just don't know what kind of stuff they actually look at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Dee, do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, Jack, I was just thinking about this. I think that they are an appellate board from our lower zoning board. So they'll be very focused on what they're looking at. And certainly if it was her matter, she would not participate.
Mm-hmm.
I could confirm that, but that's my understanding of that board. Is they're pretty narrow. They're very jurisdictional in the code. They're not one of the broad ones. And I think they're pretty quasi-adjudicatory as well. But if I could confirm that and bring that back to the group.
Yeah, well, why don't we do that then? Let's pull the Savina one out of the consent agenda, and we'll table that for our next meeting.
And I may even, if we take a break or something, be able to call The clerk's office, I think, staffs, well, maybe they don't staff that board, but I might be able to get a quicker answer, but yes, let's pull that one.
Okay.
The clerk's office, D doesn't staff this board.
Oh, you don't do that? Okay.
I don't believe so.
Okay.
All right, good. Anything else? Take a look. I keep forgetting sharing. Sorry, I'm scrolling through fast. Did anyone have any problems with this one?
No, the rest of them look fine to me.
It looks good to me.
Marsha, how about you?
They all look fine to me. I'm just scrolling through one more time.
Okay.
And item 5D was sent under the cover of another email this morning, not part of your packet.
Okay, so do we have a motion then to approve the consent agenda minus the Savina disclosure, which we'll pull out?
So moved.
Second?
Seconded.
Okay, all in favor of approving the consent agenda? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? All right, so all that's approved. So let's move on to finished business.
Can I interrupt?
Sure.
I was going to say what's interesting. I'm looking more at that Arctic Solar Ventures Corporation. If you notice, the name of the person with the economic interest is Stephen Trimble, which is the person who will be talking to us at 9:30.
Yeah, there is some overlap.
Yeah, so that would be good to ask him that as well, is because he's the entity engaging in business with the municipality. And I think he sits on the board of one of the 49th state, even though this is under a different person's name. So it'll be interesting to ask him that as well.
Right. Okay, very good. Thanks, Dee. Okay, so let's move on to unfinished business A. Dee, I hate to put you on the spot, but where
Which
are
one is
we?
A?
I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. That's going to be request for advisory 2018-6 Dunbar, 2019-4 Wilbur, and 2019-6 Constant.
Okay. And so, do you mind if I can address those one at a time?
Please do. Yeah. I'm going to have to admit, I mean, we haven't met in 6 months, right? I mean, so I
Yeah.
can't
Well-
remember where we are with any of this.
Okay. Well, the Dunbar one he is on the board of the Parks and the Parks Foundation, who also
Right.
has a funding relationship with the city. That one I just need to do. Again, it's very brief. It'll be a page long. The Wilbur one, Lisa has re-listened to the tapes and has volunteered to take that one off my plate. That was where his wife has become on part of the Heritage Land Commission Advisory Commission, and he, as an administration, as our OMB director, Office of Management and Budget, has certain interactions with him, but she thought she could get that done and take it off my plate. Chris Constant, I actually need advice from the board. That was the one where he wanted us to rule that it was unethical for someone, or to make a new requirement, sort of a conflict of interest analysis, that someone who's in the the inside circle, the top circle of the governor's office, shouldn't be allowed to also sit on the school board or an elected municipal office.
Right.
That was one that he barely said anything to us, because I said this is a legal issue and said I would take it off the plate. I had one of my attorneys wrote an opinion, and then he did not accept that. I wrote an opinion, which he accepted. The question is that it cannot be done. It's not legal. It can't do it. It's unconstitutional. The question really is, or that's the Department of Law's opinion, it cannot be legally done. The question is that helpful to, write a legal opinion almost on this issue? I would think, and I meant to try to call Chris this morning. If I call Chris, really, I doubt this is something that should be part of that he wants disclosed. I don't know if he ever made a formal request for advisor. I may have made one for him, or just, written a quick form. But I questioned the value of, unless it was pretty conclusory, I don't even know that. It's a pretty involved legal analysis for why he can't do it, or we can't do it. And again, we really never talked about any of the factual issues. It's simply there's a person currently sitting on the school board who is also the, I think, assistant chief of staff, deputy chief of staff for Governor Dunleavy. So that one I actually was going to come to. I thought that was a done issue, and then I kept seeing it back on this agenda. But, you know, we did the legal analysis. And by the way, then that was circulated to, I think, the chair of the assembly because other people were asking the same question. So the legal opinion has gone out to at least a few of the assembly people. They're not happy with it, but so I asked the board's analysis. So, you know, do you want me to sort of translate that? And it goes back to the whole thing. It's to the extent again, I don't remember whether I filed a one page. You know, Chris wants to come talk to us. I think he just stopped into one of our meetings. Is how this started. He just popped in.
That's the documentation I have, Dee, which isn't very much, but just that he stopped by and asked the board for an opinion.
Yeah. I don't think it's a helpful opinion for anybody else. It's very fact specific. So that's my quandary in that one. I actually really thought that was sort of a done deal. And I think I said that to the board before, but this is a legal issue. The Department of Law said, no, it can't be done. That's been circulated to both Chris and a few other people on the assembly who are interested in it.
Do you think it would be just worthwhile asking him if he just wants to withdraw any requests, if there was one?
That would be, yeah, that would be my plan. And I would guess 80% that he would say, yeah, please do withdraw it.
Okay.
Well, if you don't mind, why don't we do that? Why don't we ask him to withdraw? Yeah, given that legal opinion, you know, I'm not sure what would be the, you know, if it would be a kind of a mute issue to get into, right? Whether by the ethics code you can do that or not, right?
Right.
Yeah. So if you don't mind, yeah, if you could ask him if he'd be willing to withdraw it, and if he doesn't, then we'll just deal with how to, you know, cook up something saying, hey, look, by the way, Department of Law says we can't do this, so we're not going to get into that kind of analysis.
Okay. And that would be easy enough to do.
All right, great. Oh, thank you, Dee.
Actually, yeah, let me ask him, but you know, more I think about it, I could do probably just a 2-paragraph analysis of this. I mean, that doesn't get into the legal analysis. It says this is referred to the Department of Law, and you know, legally we don't think we can do it.
Right.
So if I need to do that, I will.
Hey, Dee, are you allowed to send that memo to me?
Yes.
Could I see it? I'm just totally out of personal curiosity. I'm very curious about how that analysis shook out.
Yeah. And, you know, I initially I thought, well, geez, is that, I was just about to offer that, Terry, to board members, because I think it is an interesting analysis. And I thought, well, should that be public record? Well, it is public record. It's not, there's nothing there. And I don't know, I don't think there's nothing confidential in that memo. It would become part of the ethics board files, right, Jennifer, that you actually keep all that stuff, or we can do it that way. And I don't think there's a good way to
close out the file. I think
that you would put it in the file, right?
Correct.
Yeah, and I think that's fine. If someone has enough interest, then they can track down our answer. So yes, I would do that. In fact, there's 2 members again, one by the associate and then one by me that boosted up quite a bit.
All right, great. All right, so let's move on then to unfinished E.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question? So is it the intent of the board then to carry over items A, 1, and 2 to the next meeting?
Yes, please. Dee, is that what we're going to be? You're going to be cooking up?
Yeah, can I make a suggestion too? Is Lisa now participating?
I'm here.
Okay. I had given Lisa sort of a courtesy call this morning when I had to slip in these other 2 requests for advisory opinions that have some timeliness concerns, and mentioned that we would probably not get to the ombudsman drafts, to which Lisa was very disappointed. I wonder if we've given our sort of backlog here, whether we, after following today's meeting, I anticipate that we'll spend the whole time on these 2 opinions. That we actually have sort of a special meeting in the next week or 10 days, and let's wrap up the ombudsman. We'll get these 2 little opinions done. I mean, they're really little opinions that I keep sitting on, and Lisa again has graciously volunteered to take one of them back, and just get that done. But that way we can deal with Lisa's drafts. She did indicate to me that she thought the drafts were in pretty good shape, which means nothing. We have picked apart many good drafts in the past. But to keep it in mind, maybe a special meeting is in order.
Well, that certainly sounds fine to me. It seems like, now that we haven't met in months, right? And so now that we're sort of reorganized and we're teamed up here, that's certainly fine with me. So yeah, let's do that. If someone can remind me of that at the end of the meeting actually, I don't want to jump ahead. Marcia and Jack, how's that sound to you to have a special meeting before next month's meeting to try to just bang out these specific items?
Yeah, that sounds good.
And can I just ask Terry D, if we do have more time today than we anticipate, could we talk about them? I mean, I just, of course, I'd love to get them out of here sooner rather than later. Ever hopeful that we can use 10 minutes productively or more. That's just my thought.
Oh, that's good by me. No, I think if we have the time, we can start diving into that. Jack and Marcia, does that sound good to you?
Yep.
Yeah, it does.
All right, good. Okay, so I take it that's going to be B, right? B is our Hess and our Wynn Pearson one. Okay. Well, good. So we're just cruising through new business, and we're not going to get into the D. Should we stop at like 9:25 to give everyone a chance to kind of reread the stuff about 49 State?
I think so.
Okay, good. So we got a couple.
I would assume that would be a good idea.
All right, so we got a couple more minutes then to push on into new business, potential revisions to municipal code. D, what's this?
I believe that was simply we were going to take out that what was it? The catch-all, the reservation where if they didn't fall within any other gift rules, then they could bring it to me or to the board and have a second bite at the apple. So I think that was the one.
Right.
Was this D possibly about the revisions to the provisions of the ethics code that kind of dovetail into the ombudsman's opinion? This is not that.
Yeah, this is what came out of your discussion regarding the ombudsman case. I think you asked me to add this to the agenda at one of your meetings in December. Do you remember that, Jack? I believe you made that.
I do remember that. And unfortunately, all my notes are in my packet. I think we had started talking about added some changes to the definition of what the the interest was or political activity. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah. Well, you know what I'd suggest, you guys? I think that discussion really does belong with the ombudsman's discussion, because I think once we start talking about the two ombudsman's opinions, everyone's memories are going to be refreshed about all the weirdness of those sections of the ethics code. And I have some thoughts about that, but I think that piece belongs in the ombudsman discussion. It'll go more smoothly, I think.
Okay, agreed. No, that sounds good.
Well, if I could interject, then I think there's a number of code revisions we were at one time interested in. And one of them was taking out that gift reservation language. I just thought of another one. At one point the solicitation, but I think the ethics board as a whole really understood and appreciated the Assembly's concern with that. We would not need a code provision necessarily if we wanted to address solicitation for employees. That could be what's called a PMP, a policy and procedure, which I thought might be a better idea. So at some point we might want to revisit that and say, hey, do we want to at least submit our thoughts for employees, which probably can be done in an easier fashion than a code revision.
Okay, good. So let's, if we can push that onto our agenda for our next meeting, and maybe just make the item a little bit broader. So we'll just make potential revisions to ethics code, and we'll loop that into the discussion of the ombudsman. But then we can also get this gift thing. Yeah, I remember that too. That was going to be a major headache, right? If we don't close that loophole, we're just potentially going to get people accepting gifts and then request after request after request just to, give a special waiver to this particular gift. Right.
And Chair, another one that's come up right now, I believe we touched on it, I'm not sure, but the Assembly is now looking at, in the political activity section, an addition that something about if there's an appropriation, then they can use city money for advocacy, and that sort of tracks the APOC and APOC requirements. They haven't brought that to us yet. They had sort of summarily shot that down, but now it's resurrected itself. And it's so, for instance, with the alcohol tax, could they have made an appropriation that said, hey, you can use $50,000 to do radio advertising regarding this? Because the city is very hamstrung by the ethics code for doing any kind of advocacy work. And so, meanwhile, the big interests have, tons of money for radio ads, and we don't. I think this year a bunch of nonprofits got together who care about sort of alcoholism and homelessness and started a nonprofit that could do fundraising. So that, there's an alternative, but that's sort of on the horizon as well. But I'll keep the board informed of where that's going. They had dismissed that idea that no, we don't want to get into this whole area, but then it's been resurrected again.
Okay, good. Yeah, if you could keep us updated, Dee, that would be great.
Okay, maybe you can put as an agenda item, report on adding appropriations to ethics code political activity.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, Madam Clerk, if you could do that for our next meeting. Yeah, 'cause that is, as you know, Dee, that's a discussion I'm very interested in. And so,
Yeah. Well,
Dee,
just so, go ahead.
Dee, can you state that one more time? What would it be? Potential or report?
So maybe, report by council, RIA. Oh, how about just status update, RIA Assembly discussions on inserting appropriations exception to political activity code sections, because it would be another exception.
Okay. Thank you.
And they can't remember now why they summarily rejected it. So we're having a meeting coming up.
Okay, well, it's 9:23, so I think this is close enough. Why don't we take a pause here and let's take a look, everyone, please. The Belden, right? Is it? Oh, no, it's 49th State, right? They're the first one, right? So
Right.
if you could take a look at 49, I'll see if I can scroll down to it.
I think it's page 46, Mr. Chair.
Page 46. Thank you.
And the ethics board should be very pleased. They came to me first, and I said, "Oh no, you need to go to the ethics board."
All right, let's see. Conflict of interest. Wow, okay.
And as an aside, Chair, I will note that besides Mr. Trimble, who's apparently the owner of this Arctic Solar Ventures, Joe Morrison, who I believe wrote this letter, and he is our administrator of the 49th State Angel Funds, will be assisting. I don't know if they're on the line yet. He's an investment person. There's a very small investment community up here, and they talk investment speak. That out of 10 words, he says 8 of them are words. I said, wait a minute, please explain that. Please explain that. So keep that in mind, and that people should ask those questions, because it's really investment speak. It's very difficult for me sometimes to get information. I have another matter going on with him right now as well, and unrelated to ethics, but trying to get, so just a forewarning, please feel free to say, wait a minute, what does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean?
So, Mr. Chair, it looks like this is Belden. We're doing 49th State first, so my mistake. You're going to go one more
I'm
page.
sorry.
Yeah. No, my fault.
Oh.
49th State is what we're doing first, Dee?
Yes, I believe so. That was at 9:30.
Okay.
Yes.
So there we go.
And, I can probably give you two seconds of background. The 49th State Angel Fund I believe, started out with federal grant funds, I believe, during the Obama era when he first faced the recession. And so they gave a bunch of money to a bunch of cities and said, help people invest. And we have all these tons of rules. And so we started our own 49th State Angel Funds Commission. So it's an advisory commission, and they administer all these funds. And they have all sorts of processes to do it. Again, 80% of what they talk about is over my head. But it is a code provided commission, the 49th State Commission, Angel Funds Commission. So it's steeped in sort of, we have municipal requirements, but a lot of federal requirements. Normally, it seems to be people come and say, hey, I want to develop this, and they go through this rigorous vetting process, and then the commission gives it a recommendation, yay or nay. Joe Morrison is our chief employee involved on this. I don't know if he's a director or what, but he's our face. So someone just joined, I see. And so then they give the recipient cash, and then they have sort of an oversight function for how they do the investments. And so that's their general format in a very, very simplistic manner. And I'm sure Joe can elaborate on that. I know, are they on the phone at this point? Someone just joined. Okay.
Not yet, Dee.
That's the very simplistic analysis. We're administering federal funds, and then those investors return a portion of that back to the fund, so it's self-sustaining. This one seems a little out of the ordinary to me in terms of that template, is that we might start a separate thing called a green bank to promote solar, the use of solar, which this administration is very in favor of. And that people will apply to that bank. So it's a little bit of a spin-off from the normal template that I've seen. And that's not the issue. It's just, it's interesting that maybe because these funds have been returned from investors, they can now branch out into other endeavors. So the question is somewhat if you, well, maybe I better let them explain it. If they start this green bank concept, this project, again, I assume it's Angel Funds, but that one of the commission members owns a solar company, is their conflict. Because they would be funding a project that I would assume benefit him. And so they're saying, well, if that is a problem, they don't have a problem with it. But and it's a small community. This is one of your prime examples of it's a small world, and we have these people on these commissions for a reason, because they have this expertise. So I think that's at least a short background of what's going on.
So Dee, is 49 State, is that a municipal entity? What would be the municipal connection here? Oh, it is a municipal entity.
One of our boards, yes.
Oh, got it. Okay, so Trimble's a board member on this board, and he's the principal owner of the solar company.
Right.
Okay, wow, yeah.
Yeah. And of course, he has the expertise to be helpful with this project. And so their proposal here was, well, what about if he helps put it together, but then he doesn't do any voting? And I said, I think you need to go to the ethics board to explore that. So yeah, they handle funds for investments as their primary purpose. They are a municipal board, and they have their own federal conflict of interest standards, but we haven't been asked about that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. Thank you, Dee.
Uh-huh.
Well, I guess we're waiting for Mr. Trimble. He's coming?
Yes, he and Joe Morrison should be calling in.
Okay.
I think both of them had difficulties with Teams, so they were going to call in. And Jennifer, thank you for helping with that.
You're welcome. I hope it works.
I told Lisa she probably had a 50-50 chance that we would have problems with Teams, and that we would get her opinion anyway. And this one probably does have a timeliness issue, because To the extent they're going to do fun solar projects, that'd probably be for the summertime construction season.
Mm-hmm. Dee,
And
maybe
the other,
Dee, maybe you said this. I'm sorry, I might have missed it. The group that he's on, would he qualify as a board member or anything that would fall under the conflict of interest disclosure procedure that we have?
okay, so I'm not sure I understand the question.
So under, where is it?
Oh, our typical, I think it's 060, our typical, or 050, our typical conflict of interest analysis, I think so, yeah.
Okay.
That we would run through that.
060.
You know, so maybe asking them a little bit more questions about this relationship. As you can see, what I just said is fairly, you wouldn't have gotten that out of this email. And then going through that.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Hey.
Oh,
I can hear you. Yes. Welcome.
thank you.
And for everybody, that's Joe Morrison.
Mr. Morrison, thank you. I'm Terry Kelly. I'm chair of the Board of Ethics. Thanks for making time to come with us today.
Thanks, Terry. I'm having some technical difficulties. Apologies for that.
And Dee, are we waiting for someone else to join the discussion as well, or?
Yeah, Stephen Trimble. Do you know anything about the status, Joe?
Yeah, I'm going to look right now, Dee. I emailed him yesterday with the time. So, you know, it could just be a challenge getting off a call and jumping on this. Let me see what I can do.
Okay.
Thanks for your patience, folks.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, let me just see if we can.
Hey,
It
Terry.
looks like I just admitted him.
Oh, okay. I saw that he was waiting in the lobby for Terry
Yeah,
to
I
approve
just-
it.
Mr. Morrison, what is the name of the caller joining us?
Stephen Trimble.
Stephen, are you with us?
Terry, I think you might have to approve him. Like, do you see him waiting in the lobby?
No, I see.
Correct,
I
Chair.
see. If you are on mute, you may have to push *6, Stephen, to unmute yourself. I do see that he is here in the list of participants, but it looks like he's on mute. And unfortunately, I can't unmute him from my end. Has to come from his phone.
I might be able to do something that's a little analog. Maybe I can put him on my phone and just put him on speaker. Does that work? Should we try that?
It might.
Okay, let me see if I'm sure I can
That's
get
right.
him. Oh, Steve, was that you?
Hold on, I'm gonna let the caller in. Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Morrison. You want to check in with him?
Yeah, I'll see if he can unmute as well. I saw that. Hey, Steve, *6 to unmute.
And I just saw a new number in the list of participants, 907-351-5785.
That would be me, Stephen.
Hey, okay.
Look at that.
Sorry
I
for
made
all
it.
the enthusiasm this morning, everybody.
No, I wish every meeting I called into was so enthusiastic. I like it.
Well, Mr. Trimble, this is Terry Kelly. I'm chair of the Board of Ethics. Thanks for coming in today to talk about your request for advisory opinion. We've just, we've gone over it and we started an initial discussion, just a brief little discussion about it. But I wonder if you could just give us some background, you and Mr. Morrison, whoever feels you got a better handle on this, of the situation and what the Green Bank is about, what your potential involvement would be, and where might be there possible interconnections between your work in the solar power industry and your work on this commission.
Yeah, Joe, I can take a crack at it if you want to augment as I go. Thank you, Terry. Basically, I've been on the 49th State Angel Fund Advisory Board for probably been 4 years. So through one term and then reappointed last year. And I've always sort of steered clear of mentioning specifics of the solar industry in our advisory discussions in regards to, what recommendations we may have for the city in terms of investment recommendations. And so I've always tried to keep a firm line there, not presenting the, potential appearance of conflict by promoting something that our company, Arctic Solar Ventures, could potentially benefit from. And so when the discussion of the Green Bank came up, I offered to, with that caveat previously mentioned, I brought up the offer to provide some data regarding the industry, sort of size, volume, what the sort of customer base looks like, to help the advisory board make a recommendation one way or another to the administration of whether to pursue a green bank or not. So I made the offer to sort of supply data and help Joe and his team understand kind of what the solar industry looks like right now in Alaska and Anchorage. But I wanted to bring up the importance of, I don't want to create the appearance that we are providing a bunch of information that is, deemed as being promotional of the solar industry in the creation of a green bank, because we would potentially benefit downstream of doing projects that would be theoretically funded by the green bank, for instance. And so that's kind of the basics of it. Joe, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think I can just add my perspective a bit, and if it's helpful or not, let me know. This is a very early stage theoretical proposal that, quite frankly, parts of the municipality are seeking to create a public-private partnership called the Green Bank. And Mr. Trimble's longstanding experience in the solar industry would be useful to help bring that proposal forward. Should such a proposal come forward to the 49 SAF, we do have some capital available to invest in it, and we would utilize our traditional process, which is to provide it to our investment committee, see if they recommend for investment and further on due diligence. And then that kind of falls to staff to conduct due diligence and finish the deal. It's very hard to do all this. I know that sounds strange, but getting private capital to invest in a green bank, our money can't be deployed without private capital. So, you know, the municipality could theoretically create bonds and go bond the green bank, and we couldn't invest in that because that's not private capital. So there's a lot of challenges and complexity to, once you bring, first you have to have an investment proposal, right? And that's kind of what we're talking about is, can Steve contribute to that investment proposal and walk away from the committee on this matter and say, you know, this is the side of this that I'm on. I'll answer questions as if I were bringing the proposal forward almost as part of the team that was putting it together, but I get no personal financial interest out of that, except potentially downstream years later being paid for some projects being paid for by the green bank that I do as my business, right? I would just note that it is challenging to put the proposal together, and then it's challenging to get investment from 49 SAF and an investment recommendation. And then it's challenging, even if you do that, we still need the private sector to invest. And they may or may not be enthusiastic about that. So that's sort of my perspective. I'm glad we brought this up early, but it is about as early as you can be.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Morrison or Mr. Trimble? Thank you both very much. That's really helpful.
I actually do have two questions very quickly. Joe, when you talk about a private-public partnership, would there, and you know, that's a term of art type of thing, would that actually become an entity, like its own separate entity? Or you're just using that in the more generic sense that the investment group would be working with the MOA in this?
Yeah, this is so fun for me, Dee. There's a variety of ways you could do that, right? But, and I'll call out some organizations by name. You know, potentially more of it is public, and ACDA runs a lot of it. Potentially more of it is private, and a group like, as an example, Alaska Growth Capital would run a lot of it. But they're a private group. They're not owned by the city. ACDA is. We just don't know. And some of that comes from the proposal. And then some of that comes from kind of the iterative process of from the proposal to building the thing. It could be its own entity. It could just be a program someone runs.
Okay. And then who brought this idea forward? I mean, have you had meetings with the administration on this?
I have not had meetings with the administration on this. A variety of people at City Hall have been looking at this for some time. I know the CFO has been aware of it. I report to the CFO. I think he's getting more involved. It's been discussed for the last year or two by somebody, I think, who works at Solid Waste Services. And, you know, we have 7 years of operational experience building investment funds. We're happy to contribute to creating something like this one way or another, you know, whether 49 SAF invests in it or not, if that makes sense, right? We're employees of the city. If we're trying to build a green bank, maybe it's a fit for us, maybe it isn't, but we're happy to be resources.
And just for the Board of Ethics to know, there is a person at SWS, which is Solid Waste Services, who's called a sustainability officer or resource. And her whole job, and this is a new position nationwide, sort of a progressive thing, is to come up with projects like this. So I can see that connection very quickly, because that's what they're all about, is these type of sort of environmentally progressive projects. So that we do have a whole group that's working on this kind of stuff.
I think you're on mute, Mr. Chair.
Oh, does anyone else have any questions? Well, I guess I have one. You know, so Mr. Morrison, Mr. Trimble. So it sounds to me like there's a variety of decisions that are being made, some of which Mr. Trimble would be involved with, and then some of them not, right? So I take it there's a decision: should we actually submit a proposal? does the proposal get approved by the city? If it gets approved by the city, what investments should the Green Bank make? And I take it that Mr. Trimble wouldn't be involved in any of those particular decisions. My understanding is that what he is doing for you is providing data to help you formulate your proposal to start the Green Bank. Is that right?
I've talked a lot, so I was going to let Steve jump in.
I'm gonna say yes.
Good answer.
Okay, good. So in that sense, okay, so in that sense, that does, kind of make you further removed from potential conflicts of interest then, right? I mean, so, if Steve himself were putting forward the proposal for the Green Bank, that's potentially troubling because you can see the downstream effects. So it's really, if what he's doing is just providing data for the development of the proposal, would Steve also then be helping to write the proposal and forward it on to the city?
I suspect that's up to Steve and the project team. The project team is theorized as fairly loose. There's some people who I don't know who might be involved. But my colleague at the fund, the program manager, Aaron Baca, will be heavily involved, I would think. The person at SWS would be heavily involved, Shana Kilcoyne. The CFO would continue pushing it along. I don't know what Mr. Trimble's individual level of contribution would be. Our plan was to have him on that side of the discussion and have him disclose and recuse himself from any recommendation side of the discussion.
Okay. And that would, and when you say recommendation, do you mean sort of like the very broad recommendation to even create something like the Green Bank, or are you talking about individual recommendations like, okay, we've got a Green Bank, what should we be investing in?
Specifically, it would be the recommendation for the 49th State Angel Fund to invest X dollars into a Green Bank.
Okay.
Yeah. The plan is that he has disclosed he's on the other side. He has a, secondary potential financial interest. As such, he will not be participating in that discussion or vote.
Okay. And when the Green Bank, let's suppose the Green Bank gets funded and investment decisions are being made, how do those get made? It sounded like it was a fairly technical thing with a financial advisory committee or something like that. How's that work?
It's too early to say. We don't know its governance, its entity status, how public is it, how private is it, whether it's staff driven, we just don't know yet.
Oh, okay, good. So the Green Bank would be a sort of like a semi freestanding organization then. So it wouldn't be sort of run by your board.
Oh no. The things, sometimes we wish the things we invested in we would run. Sometimes we wish we didn't run them. Right, so no, right. we won't be. No.
Okay. Good. Yeah.
Well, it's been so funny.
Yeah, I mean, well, you could see, because that would be like, the sort of like, at least the optics, right, would be even worse, right? That we're making a proposal to create an organization that our commission will actually be running. And Steve's on both, right? So he helped, create the proposal. And as it turns out, now he's running this thing. Oh, and as it turns out, he has a significant business in this area, right? If nothing else, that looks awful, right? So this is good. This sounds like, we'll have to think about it, obviously, but this definitely, it's better than that, right? I mean, so it does seem like he's potentially like twice removed from any immediate and obvious conflict, but we'll have to think about it. Good. Does anyone else have any questions for Mr. Trimble or Mr. Morrison? All right, good.
Can I ask? Jack had brought up the conflict of interest code section. I didn't know whether it was worthwhile running through some of those factors, or really with where the discussion is going right now, Terry. It's almost like it may eliminate those factors. So I'm not quite sure. I just thought I would give Jack an opportunity if he wanted to go through any of those factors. Would that shed any light on this issue?
Well, I was thinking we would go through them. Yeah. What's the will of the board here to do it now while we have Mr. Morrison and Mr. Trimble here, or to do it in executive session?
Terry,
Jack?
my recommendation is you do both. We really, I fear that as we go through any of those factors, we may not have enough information.
Okay, let's do it then. Let me get back to.
And Jack, would you mind taking lead on this?
I'm trying to get back to where those factors are.
Jack, I think they're in 1.15060E.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did they get shared? I'm trying to share them on the main screen.
Yeah, good. Thank you, Terry.
And I may have even sent these factors or a reference to them to Joe. I don't quite remember whether you've given it any thought.
I think our big one here, right, is D has the general principle, and then E has our factors. So let's take a look at those.
I feel like E1 we sort of have gotten a good explanation on. So, Mr. Trimble, since you're just on the phone, I think Mr. Morrison can see what we're looking at. But what we're looking at here is the Anchorage Municipal Code section 115060E, and it talks about factors to look at to determine whether or not the financial interest you might have as the owner of the solar company would be substantial for what's being considered. And so there's 6 factors that are in there, and that's kind of what we're talking through now. And so the first one is whether the financial or private interest is a substantial part of the matter under consideration.
Got it.
So Terry, this is where your analysis might come in, because really the matter under consideration is Green Bank, but it's really at this preliminary stage. So it's just formulating a recommendation, a proposal.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. The specific financial and private interest that Mr. Trimble has does not seem to be a substantial part of again, it's this. I'm really happy we've had this conversation, because I can see it does seem twice removed, right? So he's participating in a proposal that will create a green bank. Someone else will be making the decision about whether we should actually have the green bank. And then, as Mr. Morrison said, the green bank would be sort of like a semi-independent entity not run by this board. So, yeah, I think it's twice removed, maybe even 3 times removed.
That it's not a substantial part of the matter under consideration.
Yeah, at least, that's my thoughts. Jack, Marcia?
I agree. I don't think it's substantial.
Okay, well, let's go on to that second one then.
So this is whether the financial or private interest directly and substantially varies with the outcome of the official action.
So this we have to figure out what's the official action. And so the official action in respect to Mr. Trimble would be putting together data. And certainly, again, that's very removed. He doesn't, his interest in his business is not directly and substantially affected by putting together data.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. What if, he puts together data and also is part of the working team that writes the proposal? What do people think about that? Because it sounded like that was a possibility.
I think that's where it gets a little stickier. If the proposal, and I'm just giving a hypothetical, but if the proposal was specifically, let's invest in solar, then it starts to become a lot more definite as far as the interest goes, right?
No.
And so that was where I had a question, in the initial email, is how much control there is over which direction the proposal goes. Because if it's just responsive and providing information, that's not particularly concerning from an ethics standpoint, I think. But if it's, I'm going to shape the proposal that goes towards directing potentially these funds towards me, that looks like you're having more of a deliberative process that could go towards a private interest or a financial interest.
Yeah, Mr. Marshall, do you have any insight on that one? Did I kind of present the situation accurately, that it is possible that minimally Mr. Trimble is going to be providing data for the development of this proposal, but that he also might be a part of the team that develops the proposal itself?
I think it would be my preference to not write any of it, but just be on the data provision side.
Okay. That might be our preference too, but yet, okay. So good. And certainly, yeah, I'm with Jack on that one too, that if you're just providing data, again, you're at least twice, maybe even 3 times removed from any, direct decisions. If you're writing the proposal itself, even if you're on the team that's writing the proposal, then yeah, I would have the similar worries that Jack would. Can the proposal be shaped in a way that steers it more towards your industry? Okay. At least keeping that in mind. If you're, again, at least my view is that if you're just providing the data, you're good for number 2. And then I think that's probably true for number 3 as well. Number 3 is whether the private or financial interest is immediate and known, or conjectural and dependent on factors beyond the official action. Jack and Marcia, what do you think about that one?
I agree with that. I'm curious what Marcia thinks there. Do we still have Marcia?
Yeah. I'm sorry. Sorry, I was nodding along. My dog was barking in the background. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm agreeing with everything you're saying, Terry.
And
Yeah,
again,
good.
This is Steve.
Yeah,
Getting
Dee,
back
please.
to that analysis, it depends on what the official action is, right? So the official action we're now talking about is providing data. And so certainly there, as you said, there's a lot of conjectural stuff past the provision of data.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's right. Let's see whether the financial private interest is significant monetarily. It might be, but again, remember the way this test works, it isn't that like if you have any one of them, it's automatically a conflict of interest. Given 1, 2, and 3, I don't think we're looking at a conflict of interest here. Jack, what do you think? And I'm sorry, I kind of took over the discussion here. Jack, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it works for me. I agree. I think it. Well, Mr. Trimble or Mr. Morrison, is just so we could kind of put a little bit more behind factor number 4. What kind of level of money investment would it potentially be if it was a solar project that came out of it?
So I can speak to that a little bit. The maximum amount that 49 SAF could invest, and potentially we would invest less or none, as the committee recommends, and as the potential of the deal works or doesn't work, would be $1 million. And then I think that perhaps that $1 million could help lever debt. So we might be looking at a $5 or $6 million institution or program. And that's the extent of the financial theorizing that I'm aware of.
Okay.
But this factor, I think, is whether the financial or private interest is significant monetarily. I would say 2, Mr. Trimble.
Mhm.
And to me, it seems like, yeah, if the Green Bank ever got going, it would definitely benefit Mr. Trimble.
Well, I would agree. That's certainly. I think that sounds like that's true.
But again, it's as the chair stated, there's a number of factors, and it's a balancing of the different factors.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, and again, certainly, and with I think 1, 2, and 3 really are the important ones that I think now that it's looking like, particularly if Mr. Trimble's just providing data, 1, 2, and 3, we're not really looking at a conflict of interest here. And then whether it's significant monetarily, at that point winds up being irrelevant because there's no direct and immediate way in which he is influencing the downstream effects for him. Yeah, there's a potential downstream effect. It's conjectural. It would be dependent on a lot of other things out of his control happening. By which he might benefit monetarily, but the conflict of interest analysis is first, and that's why these are the first principles. Right? First is about like what's his involvement in it, and what control and what immediate and direct results come out of his official actions. And again, if the official action is providing data to help formulate this proposal. Again, that looks to me like there's, he's at least twice, maybe even 3 times removed from the decisions that would actually benefit him monetarily. Jack and Marcia?
Yeah, I agree. It seems like it's logical to have somebody provide data. He's not shaping the proposal at all. I'm not seeing any major red flags.
Okay. What's the will of the board? Would folks like to move into executive session to talk about this some more, or people feel good to kind of assign this to someone to write up and move on?
Well, Terry, I have one more question, if I could.
Of course.
I think we were moving in a direction of probably not a conflict in the data provision area. But what about disclosure? Are there disclosure requirements now? So if the board could think about that.
Yeah, let's take a look at, let's see, where was the...
So the procedures are under F, yeah.
And it would be F2 because he's a board member.
Mm-hmm. And so, Dee, I think don't we have an advisory opinion that sort of walks through this language, sort of the steps to be taken for disclosure? It might have been one of the Girdwood.
I would say a Girdwood one, yeah.
That might be helpful to reference too.
Okay. And I would just say to both Joe and Steve is that disclosure is everything in this area. So I don't know at the preliminary stage of providing data, but at some point is your next commission meeting, my guess, and I hope the board can fill this out, is that you would disclose it on the record at the next commission meeting. For instance, the 49th Street or State, Angel Fund's meeting that is officially disclosed, and that members discuss it and make a recommendation or not. And you would limit it probably to the official action. And again, that's a term of art in the ethics world, but that's what you're actually doing would be the data provision. I don't know whether it'd be helpful to wait for this opinion. I don't think so. I think you probably, your next meeting, you should maybe mention you went to the ethics board and this is their concern, and then you do a disclosure. And then any new group, you would do a disclosure. Because I will tell you that when some citizen says, hey, this isn't right, your major competitor in the solar world or something says this isn't right, then the board goes back to meetings and listens to them for that disclosure. And so disclosure is your friend. And it's just to do it at the beginning of any new entity meeting. You know, if you're, I don't know which group she'd ever be meeting with, but and despite the fact it's probably well known to you, what Jack was referencing was a Girdwood conflict that took many, many meetings on our part. They all knew what each one of them was involved in, and yet the issue was it formally disclosed?
Mm-hmm. That's a
So anyway, I
good
just think
approach
that's a
to me.
second component that we want to give you friendly advice about.
Definitely.
All right, good. Yeah. So yeah, Mr. Trimble, I would at least give that disclosure, just to sort of like, make sure it's on the public record. And again, there's always the optics of these kind of things, but what's always worse is, right, if things don't get disclosed, and then you don't want things disclosed sort of the first time in the Anchorage Daily News, right? I mean, like, if someone goes scandal hunting, you want to really be able to say, hey, no, this was all above board. Not only did I go to the Board of Ethics, but I also, I disclosed it. It was out in the open. And so you just want to make sure you're sort of like, fully taking care of the optics in this kind of situation. All right, good. Does anyone else have any comments or questions for this matter?
No, I think, Terry, to your and Dee's point about what the next steps are, I don't think we need an executive session. I think just some advice to them from one of the opinions about how to go through the disclosure process and what that looks like. And then maybe just some advice on, how we went through these, analyzing the factors about whether or not it's a substantial financial interest.
All right, that sounds good. Okay, let's get someone to whip that up for us. Marcia, what do you think? I don't know if we've gotten an opinion from you yet. You think you could whip this one up for us?
Oh yeah, I'll just whip that up.
That's great. So let the minutes reflect that Member Olson will be whipping up this opinion. Thank you, Marcia.
Mm-hmm.
And can I say something?
Yeah, Dee, go ahead.
Something that might be helpful is, I think we should just probably do this every time, is to get the request that the clerk get a copy of this recording to Marcia, because it's so much easier when we do that, versus waiting 2 to 3 weeks and then making that request and then waiting a week. Marcia, I've learned very much the hard way to write these opinions quickly, right after the meetings, and not wait, 4 to 6 months.
That would be lovely if I could have them, the note or the recording sooner rather than later. So I can whip it up real quick.
So Jennifer, is that possible?
Absolutely. We'll get that to you, Marcia.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer.
All right. Well, great. Well, Mr. Morrison and Mr. Trimble, thank you both for your time today. I really appreciate it. That was very, very helpful. And and again, you'll be getting something in writing from us. But for now, it looks good, right? It looks like that there's not a conflict of interest here. And just make sure that the disclosure gets done at the next meeting, and you'll be good to go. You'll get Mr. Trimble will get an opinion from us, and just keep in mind that opinion is sort of your ethical protection, your legal protection in some ways, that if a citizen later files a complaint against Mr. Trimble about this, you can say, hey, I went to the ethics board, here's the opinion. And as long as you operated within the framework of the opinion, you are protected from citizen complaints for your official actions. So you'll be getting that soon. That's going to be whipped up right away. And you'll be getting that soon. So thank you both for your time today. I appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, can I just clarify, is the opinion that Marcia is writing up, is that going to come back to the board, or is that going to go just straight to Mr. Morrison? And
oh yeah, that's a good question.
We do have an upcoming special meeting that we could put it on for. That would allow for a quick turnaround.
Oh yeah.
Not to volunteer Marcia's time even more.
That'll be great.
Real quick, yeah. Whipped up real quick. I see.
And Chair, can I ask one more question on this?
Sure.
You mentioned under your sort of thinking that there was no conflict of interest here. I've always been of the mindset that that this is probably is a conflict of interest, but it is not substantial and it is manageable. Because it is, so which way do we go? There is none, or really or maybe we call it potential conflict of interest, but you believe it's manageable. And so a question for the board.
My looking at this would be, it would be a minor conflict of interest that would fall under A.
Okay.
That's how I see it, because there is a potential private interest. And if we go through that analysis we did with the Girdwood Board of Supervisors one, there's, an Alyeska hotel employee could potentially derive benefit from ski trails in Girdwood. That we saw that as being, it's attenuated, but it's there. And I think that's sort of the same thing here. It's attenuated, it exists, but it's not substantial. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys as well.
Yeah, that's the way I was looking at it too, right? I mean, and so a conflict of interest is defined as, in which the public servant has a substantial financial or private interest. And so I guess part of it is if we're saying in the official action that Mr. Trimble's taking, he doesn't have a substantial interest, then there is no conflict of interest. If we're saying that he does, then there would be a conflict of interest and we'd have to manage it. So what do you think? I guess I'm kind of inclined, since we initially said that we didn't think in terms of standard number 1 that he had a substantial interest that was a part of the matter under consideration in light of what he was doing, providing data for this proposal. If we feel that that there's not a substantial interest in this official action, then he does not have a conflict of interest. If we think that he does, but it's too conjectural and then he would have one, but it would be manageable. What do people think? And I will have to say here, I would say that, Mr. Trimble, you might need to come back to us, or I suppose the opinion could get into this stuff. It certainly does get more dicey the more involved you get in the situation, right? So if you start developing the proposal, as we said, then one of those barriers that kind of removes you or insulates you from the conflict of interest gets removed. So suddenly you're one step closer to having a direct benefit to the outcome of your official action. But if you're just providing data to people who are going to be writing the proposal, my sense of our discussion was that we thought that there was not a conflict of interest. Jack, Marcia, what do you think?
I mean, I think there's potential, just like with the Girdwood Alyeska example, right? Like potentially it could lead to benefit way down the line, and it's not something that's direct control over, but I'm inclined to say it's a very minor potential for conflict and it's completely manageable, but I don't think it's completely non-existent is my interpretation.
And can I interject real quick, Terry? The code doesn't ask us to determine whether there is or there isn't a conflict. The code is there a substantial substantial financial or private interest? And that's why I sort of hesitate to say there's no conflict of interest, because when you first look at this matter, it seems to say, whoa, there is a conflict of interest. This person is developing something and he's going to really benefit financially. So I guess I don't want to downplay that by saying, no, there is none. But it's not a substantial one under our code.
No, that sounds good to me. That's good. Yeah. So, Marcia, when you whip that up, just insert that in there. That'll be.
Well, that's the D rule, Marcia. That's paragraph D.
Yeah, when I get your draft this afternoon, I'll look for that. So thanks, Marcia.
Oh yeah, I'll get right on that.
Just enlist Steve Strom. He's happy to help out.
Oh, I know. Well, on the timeline we're on now, we'll probably get this opinion out in October, right? And so. All right, very good. Okay, so I think, Dee, do you have any other comments to make?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay, very good. All right, Mr. Morrison and Mr. Trumbull, we will release you to the rest of your day. So thank you very much for joining us today. And Yes, we'll be meeting in the next week or two. We'll look over the draft opinion, and we should have something out to you. What is it, June? We should have something out to you by the end of the month. But in the meantime, you have our sort of oral communication, and that should be enough to work off of for right now.
And so to summarize that, if I can just understand, could you sort of parenthetically summarize, just so Steve walks out, kind of knowing that in one or two sentences, what is that sort of parenthetic, this is what we think?
One, that to the degree that his official action is providing data to the team or commission or who is going to develop this proposal, that there is not a substantial conflict of interest, which is what is prohibited by the code, right? I mean, and so there's not a substantial conflict of interest. So as far as the conflict of interest provisions of our code goes, he does not have an unethical conflict of interest. Two, nonetheless, he should disclose the potential conflicting interests that are at play here at the next board meeting. That should be disclosed in sufficient detail to allow the board to make a decision about whether there is a substantial conflict. He's certainly free at that time to also disclose that he has come to the Board of Ethics and that the city's Board of Ethics has determined there is not, in fact, a substantial conflict of interest. But he does want to make sure that that disclosure gets on the record. And then he should be good to go. To the degree, and I don't know, how much you want us to get into this, and we could, we'd have to probably deliberate longer on it. To the degree that he starts writing the proposal, or he's a part of the people developing the proposal, there is much more potential, it seems to me, for there to be a substantial conflict of interest. So my advice for at the moment, and it sounded like Mr. Trimble, that's sort of where he was at as well. I don't know if we still have him, but it sounds like he was of the opinion that he would not prefer to be on the team that's actually writing the proposal. That would sort of be the advice that we give, like to the degree that we've sort of like, hey, here's our prudential advice for you, would be for him not to be actually on the team that's writing the proposal itself, because that puts you a big step closer to being able to control an outcome that has a positive downstream effect for your private interest. But to the degree that he's providing data for that, I think he's okay.
I'm still here. That is my preference.
Yeah, Mr. Trimble, does that sound reasonable to you?
It does.
Okay. So those are the two takeaways. Yeah, to the degree that he's providing data, he's good. No code violation from the conflict of interest perspective. Just, finish crossing your T's and dotting your I's by doing the disclosure at the next board meeting, and he's good to go. All right.
Sounds great to me.
All right, very good. Well, again, thanks for coming, and we'll whip that opinion right out and have that within hours, probably by lunchtime. So
Minutes.
Marcia, is it done? Have you finished?
It's already done. I got it.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. Very good. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your time and consideration. I appreciate it.
Oh, you bet. Thanks a lot. Thanks for making time to see us today.
Absolutely. Be well.
All right, everybody. Okay, well, that was worked out great.
So, Mr. Chair, before you begin, I just want to note we have been joined by 2 new callers. So I'm unsure if they're from 49th or from the Belden request for advisory opinion, but we do have 2 new people on.
Oh, okay. Well, let's see. Oh, yeah, and they're supposed to be on in 10 minutes. So why don't we switch gears, and if everyone could take a look at the Belden material. And then, Jen, yeah, should we let those folks in or tell them that we're going to let them in shortly, or how should we do that?
So it's an open public meeting, so I've already admitted them. So
oh, okay,
we have
good.
Two callers. Callers, I'm just going to say your phone number. If you want to identify yourself, you can. 907 343-6610.
That's Alden Thurn, Director of Municipal Benefits, and here on the Belden 1030.
Thank you. And then we have a caller from 907-885-8760.
Yeah, I am Carrie Belden. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. So if board members, if you could pull up this request for advisory, this is, let's see, where are we? This is is this the one that's on page 46?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, good. So everyone, if you pull this up on page 46. And Ms. Belden, and who was our other caller?
Alden Thurn.
Okay, if you folks could just give us just a minute to reread your request for advisory, and then you could walk us through the situation, okay?
Absolutely.
Oh, and by the way, I'm Terry Kelly. I'm chair of the Board of Ethics. So thank you so much for coming today. I really appreciate you making the time to talk to us about this.
Absolutely.
Mr. Thurn and Ms. Belden, could you walk us through the situation at hand here, then?
You referring to me?
Either one of you, whoever wants to jump in.
All right, well, I'll just start real quickly here. I spoke with Dee several months ago, so the email I think that you may be reading was crafted back in like January, February time period. I was assisting with the Transportation Inspection Department with some turnover. The front counter person at the time, Carrie Belden, was going to was a very strong candidate for the Transportation Inspection Department. The department only has two positions: the Transportation Inspector and the Code Enforcer. So it's a very small department. It's certainly less people now than it was in years past. So there's a limited opportunity for shuffling of work and so forth. And at that particular point in time, we wanted to make sure people were aware that that what had been going on up to that point was that Carrie has an aunt and a mother who own a couple of the transportation cab taxi permits. Her relatives own them, and that through the course of general business, there is interactions between permit holders and the Transportation Inspection Department, and we wanted to be upfront and above board that there wasn't any opportunity for conflict between the employee and those permit holders. So leading up to that, Catherine, who was the prior TI, was dealing with all of those particular calls that came in with regards to those permits, and Carrie was handling everything else. And then with Catherine leaving position and only having one person in the immediate term, I took over the responsibility of dealing with anything that might come up with those permits. Since then, Carrie has been promoted to the Transportation Inspection Department, and the department has hired a new employee who's been there a few months now that is the code enforcer of those particular, of all taxi cab permits and vehicle for hire permits and so forth. So what we wanted to express was just the opportunity that was out there. And in talking with Dee, she suggested that I do a write-up at that particular point and send it to her. So that's kind of the starting point of where we were at.
Okay, good. Just let me start. Dee, is it possible for our board to have a code enforcer position? I think that would be great. Why don't we have that? Right.
Sorry. Well, right now it's transportation code enforcer, but you could make a different one if you want.
Oh, we've talked about, right? You know, the ethical code enforcer. Oh man, I'm adding that to my byline right now.
And if I could add one other point, I think it's in the bottom of my the email there. Carrie is listed as a co-permittee on those 3 permits that were mentioned. I believe that that's stated in my email at that time as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I have questions I think that might be helpful to the board right off the bat, get some other background information out.
You bet, Dee. Go ahead.
Unless Carrie wants to add some right now to what Alden has provided.
No, Dee, go ahead.
Okay. Can you explain what a legacy permit is, Alden?
Well, I'll let Carrie do that. I mean, I think she's been the TI for several months now, and she's dealing with it on a daily basis. So, and she's the expert now in Title 11. So, Carrie, why don't you just explain the difference between a legacy permit, 1 through 150 something, and then the current non-transferable permits after that.
Okay, so the legacy permit is also known as a transferable permit. And that's 1 through 159 of the permits, and 160 through 250 is a non-transferable. A non-transferable permit is an owner-operator permit, and so that owner has to drive that vehicle 50% of the time or more in order to retain that permit. Those are the newer permits that were issued by the city. The older permits, which are the legacy and transferable, are permits that the owner does not have to operate that vehicle. They can lease it out. So they can just own the paper, lease out the permit to a vehicle owner or a driver and not have to operate that. Another benefit to the legacy and the transferable is that they are sellable. So you can sell those permits, whereas the non-transferable, you cannot sell it. If you choose not to be an owner-operator, you give that permit back to the city. You do not get any sort of, you can't sell it. You can't get any money back for it. That's the primary difference.
Okay, and if I can add in for the board's benefit, the legacy permits have been a hot issue for the last many years. Many assembly meetings and about them, because at one point they were incredibly valuable. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, Carrie, like $150,000. They were very, very valuable. And then the city took certain steps to say we the city are getting out of this business. Where from here on out we're going to issue these non-transferable permits and sort of pull back on this industry. But there's something happening in this fall, right, Carrie, that changes the landscape with respect to the legacy permits. Is that correct?
Yes. So, and you are correct. They used to be $130,000 to $150,000, and now, due to the issuing of all the other new permits on the road, now the selling of those permits have been going for $8,000 maybe, and trending downward. But as of September 1st, in Title 11, the Assembly put in there, it's called a Certificate of Ownership. And what that says is after September 1st, those permits are no longer transferable. So you are no longer allowed to sell that permit. You can own it, but it is yours to own. You can sell it.
Okay. And that's very, very significant, again, because these were very valuable permits at one point in time. And now they're far less valuable. Had this issue come up 3 years ago, there might be a very different take on Carrie's part ownership of one of these permits. But I think in September, and those are actually are the questions, Carrie, and Alden, I would ask you is, I think the staff there, the second person, can certainly handle the logistics of anything related to these permits. Signing
Yes.
this, reviewing all that kind of stuff. That's straightforward. But the question
Yes.
might be, how can you, in your position, Carrie, as the transportation inspector, and that basically is like the department head of this group, and she has other responsibilities, limousines and other, I don't know, rental vehicles, but other, it's not just cabs. But how can you, in your position, influence the value or the transfer of, what can you do that would help legacy permits or hurt the other group? There's a lot of factions in the cab world. What power, given that in September the whole landscape's going to change dramatically. So I was most interested in what could you do to influence the value or transfer, any kind of benefit accruing to a legacy permit?
I do not believe I could do. I don't believe I have any power to aid or benefit either side, either transferable or non-transferable permit owners. And I think Alden will agree with me on that. The taxi industry, as well as more so the taxi industry, is very regulated. So all of my authority comes out of Title 11, and the Assembly, like you said earlier, has had multiple hearings, and this has been kind of a hot topic for years in the past, and they have structured it out pretty finely about what's going to happen with these permits. And like you said, down to the point of on a specific day, September 1st, this fall, they will no longer be able to be sold once they sign that certificate of ownership. So I don't believe I could benefit either side, the non-transferable or the transferable, because it's so regulated and it's so structured. And I don't see how I could do it.
And I would also add, there is a transportation commission that also kind of leads as a part of Title 11. So the transportation inspector just acts as a secretary, note taker for that particular commission, but ultimately that commission is heavily engaged in rates. It's not the TI that sets rates, has any influence on that. Looks at sales, puts forward any kind of potential changes that they're looking for. So there is a commission, and then obviously this position also reports to the city manager. So there's some definite oversight there from an administration standpoint. But as Carrie mentioned, basically the TI's job is to follow Title 11, and if there's a change that the Assembly or the cab industry or the commission want, then it's the TI's responsibility basically to provide data and background information, but the decision ultimately is not made by the TI. It's made by some other party, either via the assembly by change in Title 11 or approving some of the more processing things, which is done by the commission.
And Chair, could I continue with a few questions on this area? Terry?
Sure thing.
Oh, okay. Terry, or Alden, with respect to that commission, is it adjudicatory or is it advisory? You must be on mute.
Well, why don't you give me a definition of how you affirm adjudicatory?
Can individual cab owners come before the commission for a decision on some type of decision relating to their permit or to the sale?
Yeah, they have public testimony, and they can come. It's almost just like the assembly. They can come forward once a month, and they can put issues on the agenda and testify. But ultimately, like when we had some of these permits that were being sold, they go on a list, and those have to be approved and voted on by the commission. It's not just we're just listening to people. They have some delegated powers in making decisions.
Okay, and I didn't know that. That's fascinating.
No, and I am not a voting member. I am just the secretary on the commission, so I don't have any voting power.
You basically staff the commission, right?
I staff the commission. I take the notes. I schedule it. Yeah, I'm the secretary of it, but I do not make any decisions. Yeah, and I bring dinner. I don't have any authority over the commission, and I don't have a vote on the commission's agenda or any of the items on the agenda.
But Carrie, this is Lisa Toussaint. I'm along with Dee. I'm one of the attorneys who serves as counsel to the Board of Ethics. What is the transportation inspectors? I guess I'm trying to understand what your role is regarding the permits, that these transferable permits that have been issued to, not only to your family members, but other transferable permits. What do you guys exactly do? I know that you said that, it's a very, and I think Alden said this is a very regulatory type of program. And what I'm gathering from that is that what Alden is saying is there's not really a lot of discretion by you guys to, make, kind of apply factors and come up with determinations on whether that are relevant or, to benefit particular permit holders. You just look at the code, you apply the code, and you kind of check those boxes and move things along. But can you explain a little bit more about what you guys do relative to those permits? What those Title 11 kind of in regulatory responsibilities are?
Yes, absolutely. So what we do is we ensure that that every permit pays their annual permit fee. We ensure that the vehicles have the proper insurance. We ensure that we investigate any complaints. We do vehicle inspections. We make sure that basically they're safe vehicles, the drivers and the permit owners are following Title 11. I also, as a transportation inspector, do vehicle for hires, which are more company-based, and limousines and stuff like that. But we basically, all the regulations and all the things put out in Title 11, we just ensure that those are done. And I have and we deal with the dispatches and make sure that they're kind of functioning within their boundaries, and we help resolve any complaints we get about the dispatches, and we make sure that the proper cars are on the road and not cars that shouldn't be on the road, and offer kind of support for the industry too, to try and just kind of help it run smoothly and problem solve any issues that come about. We also do send people for drug testing if we think that an accident was caused, by a driver who was, on drugs or whatever. But I would like to point out, though, that we have hired a senior code enforcement officer, and he deals with anything and everything with the permits that are involved with my family. So I don't do anything with those. He has full authority to handle any issues that arise with those permits. So he does not have to come through me. He can make those decisions. And if he has any questions, he has been instructed to go to Alden as a sounding board for making those decisions if there's any sort of issues that arise from my family's permits.
Does he carry report to you, or who does the senior code enforcer report to?
He reports to me, but when he was first hired on, Alden very specifically sat him down and addressed the situation, as I did too. And so he is fully comfortable. And to be quite honest, I don't want to have anything to do with my family's permits either. I don't like to mix business with family life. I'm very used to that. I used to be the director over at Corrections, and I have been in a work environment that dealt with a lot of confidentiality and a lot of ethical decisions. And I'm very used to saying, no, I can't touch that. I can't touch that. Or when people come and try and, what happened here? What happened there? Nope, that's confidential. I can't talk about that. So I'm very used to having these ethical boundaries. And so I feel that my working relationship with Jack wouldn't have any issues with him dealing with these permits.
And the senior code enforcer, so if a complaint, for example, I think that you mentioned as the Transportation Inspection Department investigates complaints related to these permit holders or the folks who are driving the vehicles. I imagine if there was some type of incident that occurred in the course of transporting someone in a taxi, that there might be a complaint that arises from that. Would the senior code enforcer, if there were a complaint involving either the vehicle involved in one of your family's permits or the driver, the senior code enforcer would investigate that complaint, correct? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes.
And would a recommendation come in the course of investigating a complaint, presumably that code enforcer could recommend an action be taken relative to that permit, or the driver or the permit holder? Or how would that work? What could come out of a complaint?
Yes. An action could be taken against, normally it's against the vehicle owner or the driver, because they're the ones doing the action. The permit holder usually, unless they're an actual owner operator, usually just holds the piece of paper and doesn't have a lot of involvement unless they actually lease it out and are involved. But he could make, we have violations. He could do like $100 fine to the driver, or do a suspension to the driver or anything like that. But he has the authority to make those decisions within his job description, that he does not need approval. He does not need my approval to make those.
Are there any situations that you can think of where an action might actually be taken against the permit holder?
Yes. Yeah. So not so much for the legacy permit holders, which are the ones my family owns, but the non-transferable, they have to drive 50% of the time or more. And so if they don't reach that threshold, we can remove their permit. And so he would have the ability and the authority to do that. But those are not the type of permits that my family has. Just so you understand the clear.
Yeah.
I can't think of something that he could do for a legacy permit owner, because they are different. They have less restrictions on them than the non-transferable. The transferable people have to drive.
Basically, the primary thing for the legacy is that they pay their annual fee. If they don't
Yeah.
pay their annual
Yeah.
fee to renew their permit, then there's some action against them. And
Right.
on these three particular permits, they're not driven by her mother or her aunt, so they're all leased out.
And it's not like, I guess what I'm trying to understand is there some responsibility that a permit holder of one of these transferable permits would have over, say, the operators that they actually get involved to drive the vehicles that are kind of subject to this, that are covered by this permit? Does the permit holder have some type of responsibility and such that a complaint could ultimately arise with regard to a transferable permit and an action against the permit holder? Like, who's responsible for the car being a good car on the road? Who's responsible for making sure that the driver's legit? Obviously, the driver's responsible for their own behavior, but does the permit holder have some responsibility with regard to the folks that they, allow to drive under their permit?
So the permit holder can lease the permit out to a driver. We have several permit holders that are out of state and they have no contact with anybody or anything except where they sign this lease agreement, and then that person, that leasee, operates the vehicle and runs the vehicle all year long, and all they do is send a check in for renewal every year. So
Yeah.
They have an agreement. If they don't if they don't operate it themselves, they have an agreement with whoever they have decided to lease it to. So there is that arrangement, but if they lease it to someone, then those are the people that are operating the vehicles, and those are the people we deal with. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess I think what I'm gathering from your response is that there's not a lot of responsibility that the permit holder has over the vehicle operator. They've got an arrangement, but if the vehicle operator is not driving a good car, for example, or if the vehicle operator is driving poorly or behaving badly, contrary to the requirements of the code, the permittee action isn't taken against the permit holder, the permittee. Action is taken against the driver or the driver.
Yeah, the vehicle owner or the driver. Yeah,
Yeah.
we can say this guy can no longer drive for you. We've suspended his license or whatever it may be. So you need to find a new person to lease your permit to.
Got it.
That would be the extent of. That would kind of be the extent of any sort of interaction with the permit holder, other than the annual permit fee, and that's if they pay it, they pay it. If they don't, they don't. And
Got
that's
it.
pretty black and white.
Yeah, got it. Thanks a lot, Carrie. Appreciate and Alton, thank you.
Good. Does anyone else have any questions for Carrie and Alton here?
This is Dee. I do have questions, but if anybody else has others, I can wait.
No, go ahead, Dee.
Okay. One is, do you make recommendations, Carrie, to the commission ever? Because even though you staff the commission, so do Lisa and I, the person you just heard from, and obviously we have a tremendous amount of input into the discussion. So do you make recommendations to the commission?
I have not so far. I'm pretty new to this, but not that I know of. No, I provide the documents. They discuss it amongst themselves, and they vote whether or not they want to approve a sale or not approve a sale, or approve a dispatch or not approve a dispatch. I have not yet provided a recommendation.
Okay.
And that's not what I have been told they've done in the past either.
There are situations like where they might task the TI to go out and look at rates or look at certain things that are going on, and the TI goes out and does the information and gathers it. I could potentially see that there might be recommendations. What they say, well, what do you think, kind of a thing. We have a hard time getting the commission meetings on a monthly basis, so They don't happen very often, and the Title 11 was pretty much rewritten a couple of years ago, so there hasn't been a lot of motivation for change to that particular one. They just kind of want it to run for quite a while. So as Carrie mentioned, it's just basically administering the procedural stuff that happens within Title 11.
Okay. And then my second area of interest was your access to what we don't call it confidential information so much anymore, but non-public information. So you in your role have some type of access to information, and I don't know what that would be, and so I'm concerned about it may just be something the board says, and please don't disclose non-public information to family members. I don't know if you can add to any of that discussion. What type of non-public information do you have access to that your family doesn't have access to?
Well, while she's thinking about that, let me add in. I mean, there are situations of discipline and inappropriate behaviors that do come up that are confidential between drivers and so forth. This particular industry is very fragmented, but they all talk. So, it is really a high priority for the TI to keep all of those things that are going on amongst the industry and individual taxi cabs, private. That is a piece that does happen.
Okay. Anything else, Carrie, you can think about?
That would be non-public. Can you repeat it? That would be non-public. That I would be privy to as the TI?
Yeah.
Not that I can think of. I mean, it's all pretty clear and transparent. I mean, we follow Title 11, and I mean, in our files, really has maybe disciplinary for a chauffeur, but then it really just has business transactions in our files. Like when they change their vehicle, what the new registration is, what the new, insurance is, and stuff like that. So our files are pretty, they're pretty narrow as far as what they keep. Mm-hmm. There's not a whole lot other than information that's needed out of Title 11 regarding vehicles and transactions and things like that. Maybe some addresses and phone numbers of the permit holders and the business holders and stuff like that, but that's pretty benign.
Okay, then I don't have any follow-up in that area.
Hey, Carrie. So is pretty much the only way that a permit holder can lose their permit is to just not pay their annual fee? Is that pretty much it? For one of these transferable ones.
For one of these transferable ones, yes. And I don't know, Alden, maybe you might have a different thing, something that maybe that has happened in the past. But as far as I know, yes, that would be basically the only way to lose that permit.
Got it.
Can I ask one last question, Sheriff of Carrie?
Sure.
If somebody wants to start a new cab company, who makes that? Does that go to the commission? Because what I'm thinking about, that could be in direct competition to your family and to your permit. Is that the type of transaction that would be under the purview of the commission?
Yes, we actually just did start a new cab dispatch company just a couple weeks ago, and that is voted on by the commission, and I do not have a vote on that.
Okay, good.
And is the commission, is that the commission, who's on the commission?
We have 5 commission members right now. They are, it is a non-paid commission. They are just public members.
Got it.
Recommended by the mayor and the the administration.
Got it. Just one of our municipal commissions that's established by the code.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Does anyone else have questions here? I guess Dee and Lisa, I wanted to ask you, you know, the concern here is potential conflict of interest. Is there is there an issue here of also having a household member having a share in a municipal contract? Is that part of here? Let me share that section of the code that I'm thinking about. Here, I hope that
Well,
came
we might
up.
ask- we might
Is
ask
this
Carrie if-
so? D, is this a relevant thing? Is like having a family member, an immediate family member, have a taxi permit? Is that the kind of thing that would make this section relevant as well? And I'm looking at 115-100, right? So interest in municipal contract or business with the municipality.
Well, this is I'm flipping to that section, but I would think so. That at least you'd want disclosure, and I actually think that's the reason Carrie is here, is disclosure to the board. I don't know if we make I guess we don't. Our employees don't fill out those disclosure forms.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting about it is that this disclosure is about, you know, kind of advance notice. And Carrie, you know, wasn't really with the Muni at a point in time. At least it sounds like when these permits actually were issued to her family members. Is that right, Carrie? These have been in the family for a while.
These permits have been in my family for like 20 years or something.
Mm-hmm.
They're long standing, and they're not anything that is. I've never had anything to do with them. I've never profited from them. I've never run a cab. I've never had a chauffeur's license. I've never had anything to do with them. Those are my mom's and then my aunt, but my aunt is looking to sell, which would really remove some complications right there. But these are solely my mom's things. I didn't even know how many she had until just recently. So.
Mm-hmm.
And Terry, going back to your question, I do think that looking at that code section, that it does apply. I think there's the subsection A is a disclosure component, and I don't know if we ever gave Carrie a form to fill out, but I think this would be that. But and then there's the flat rule, I think B2, where they can't acquire a new personal or financial interest.
Well, I think it's more than that, right? It's they can acquire, receive, apply for, be a party to, or have a personal and financial interest, right? And she does, right? Because she's the beneficiary, right, of her mom's permit, right?
I'm not actually the beneficiary. I'm just on there as her safety net. So I'm on there so that if she dies, it would go back to the city. So I'm on there not so that I can collect them myself, but that so they can go to another family member. I was the oldest and most responsible of the kids when she obtained these permits, 20 years ago. And so that's the reason I'm on there, not because they're coming to me, but because at her death, she didn't want them to go back to the city. She wanted them to stay in the family.
So if something happened to your mom, for example, at least this email says Carrie's listed as the beneficiary, transfer of the permit should something happen to her aunt or something happen to her mother. So you would become the permit holder if something happened to your mom.
And then follow her wishes on where they need to go. Yes. So it's not, but my mom is in good health, and this TI position is an appointed position. So chances are I will be, out of this position before anything happens to her, and so.
Okay, can I say too, Terry?
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the criteria, right, the general rule is you may not acquire interest in grant, contract, or lease. It doesn't say permit, but let's presume that's includable in that concept. But A and B are unless the public does not take official action, and I think we're we're looking at what official action she can take in terms of both the commission and the chief enforcement officer, compliance officer. But number two, if this requirement is not met, the public servant may request additional review by the Board of Ethics. So
I agree. No, there's, yeah, I just wanted to draw our attention to the fact that
Okay.
in some sense,
Yeah.
we're not just talking about, we're talking about a different conflict of interest section of the code here, that what we're really talking about, at least as far as point 100 goes, is, does she take official action that could directly affect that permit? Because it does seem to me that as the beneficiary, regardless of what you would then do with the permit, that as the beneficiary, she has a personal interest in that cab permit. So then the question is, and this is what we're really trying to, work out today. Are you taking official action that could directly affect that permit? And if not, then you're still good to go, right? So don't panic. I'm not saying, it's not that because you're the beneficiary, you can't possibly either have your job or be that beneficiary. You might be able to be both at the same time, but we've got to make sure that you're not in a position where you're taking action. And then notice the language is a little bit looser, right? That could directly affect the request, right? So that's sort of what we're trying to tease out today.
And Terry, I agree. I think this is the more applicable code section, actually, than a general conflict of interest.
Yeah, it might be. You're right. I mean,
Well,
Jack and
this is
Marcia?
as the board,
oh, go ahead, Dee. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, as the board knows, this is similar to, we've had a number of people in the administration, specifically new department heads, who have come for help with guidance because they have past ties to the industry, and now in the area, now they're the director. So we've done that for a number of the administration folks. And I'm sorry to interrupt, Terry.
No, not at all, right? Well, Dee, you might remember, I think the old code used to say you couldn't, right? Remember, I think the old code said you couldn't be in the same department that was administering this kind of stuff and have any financial interest in this stuff. Remember, we had a couple of headaches with that one, but we've loosened that up a little bit. Marcia and Jack, any questions, any comments?
I don't have any questions. It's just comment-wise, it sounds like she's done an excellent job of trying to wall herself off from this, and so I think any guidance we can give to help with that is good, but I'm not super concerned.
Okay, good. Marcia?
Yeah, I agree. It sounds like this has been, she's been really thoughtful about how to proceed with this. And so I don't have any major concerns or questions.
Okay, good. Yeah, and I sort of feel the same way. Yeah, I really appreciate the way you've tried to kind of like firewall yourself off. And yeah, and come September, when those permits are not transferable, you'll be even in better shape, right? The optics is a little weird, right? I mean, and so, again, it's good that you've sort of disclosed this and yet you'll have an opinion about this. Again, for this kind of stuff, as I just said, to another matter, right? It's like, you never want this to first be disclosed in the newspaper, right? I mean, like, and so it's good that it's out here. And so if something does come, hey, wait a minute, this transportation inspector also, has a relation to this permit. It's always good just for the, the benefit of both you and the city's reputation, right? To be able to say, no, this has been disclosed. It's been run past, an impartial board, and here are the firewalls that we set up to make sure that there wasn't going to be a conflict here. So, no, good job, both of you. I think the things that you've done are good. Certainly. Again, the optics is weird. I want to have heartburn on this, but I don't, right? It seems like you guys have done a good job firewalling things off. Lisa and Dee, is that your feeling particularly? Lisa, you had a lot of questions about how investigations might work and complaints and things like that. You okay with this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really focusing on what is the official action that she could take that could directly affect, her family members or herself, as either, her family members are the permit holders and she is a beneficiary. But I'm not feeling like there's a lot of discretion in her position. And I think she's done everything she really could to kind of wall herself off from any type of discretionary decision making. And I'm not even sure there's all that much discretion within the transportation inspection office with regard to permit holders anyway.
Yeah, that's sort of the way I've been feeling about this too. And then, and then part of, the reason why we've kind of like updated the code here is that, as you say, Carrie, I mean, like, it's a weird way of putting it, but it's not your fault that your mom is involved in the taxi industry and has this permit, right? And it seems, profoundly unfair to you to say, oh, well, you can't occupy this position just because you happen to have a household member who, has these permits. And so provided, this is the big provision, right? Provided that firewalls can be kind of put in place that insulate you from the potential conflicts, it seems like you should be able to do both. The only discretionary thing I see here, and I mean discretionary in a slightly different way, is that you are the beneficiary, right? And by that I mean you don't have to be the beneficiary. Your mom could pick someone else to be the beneficiary. So that's when I talk about how to avoid conflicts of interest, usually the best way to avoid it is to divest yourself of the conflicting interest, right? Just either recuse yourself, or if you're not going to recuse yourself, divest yourself of the interest. And if the ordinance change in September, I would have a little heartburn there, and I might recommend as a prudential matter, just for the optics, to not be the beneficiary. I know in your mind, your mom would not, your mom would want that to go, I guess, back to the city or whatever. So in your mind, you don't see yourself as a beneficiary, but legally you are, and in the public eye, you would be, right? So you can imagine sort of, again, use the newspaper test. How would it be presented in the newspaper? And the way it's going to be presented in the newspaper, right, is transportation inspector is also the beneficiary, right? Or if your mom were to pass, right, suddenly you are the owner of that permit and you're the transportation inspector of those permits for the city, right? The optics is terrible, right? So, if it weren't that the case in a couple months, that was going to dissolve anyway. I would have more heartburn about that, and I would, I would at least encourage this board to think carefully about recommending to you to change that situation and not be the beneficiary of that permit. But since September 1, it's not going to be transferable anyway. I think that's okay. So given that, I don't have any heartburn about this particular situation. And Jack and Marcia, sounds like you're on board with that too.
I agree. Yeah.
All right. Well, Marcia, if you could bang that one out as well. So while you're writing the other one, it seems like the issues are closely enough related that you could do this one as well. So thank you. Oh, wait a minute. I've got to get that review so I can see Marcia's reaction. Oh, there we go. Right. There's the outrage and indignation I was looking
another
for.
one?
That's great. I love it. That's what I live for, is the indignation, the okay. No, just kidding. Okay. So, well, let me let Alden and Carrie go. Thank you so much for coming. Really helpful having you here and walking us through this situation. I think we all feel a lot better about it. I felt pretty good anyway. I thought your email, it sounded like a real conscientious effort was made to firewall yourself from these interests. So thank you. No, I think we're in good shape. You will be getting from us soon an advisory opinion on this matter. That'll sort of spell out, with the situation, the applicable code, and our feeling that there's not a problem. The oral advice that we can give you, like sort of today, is that provided that you're doing the things that you told us about today, the kind of firewalling and the delegating of things to other people, that's great. And if you're doing those kinds of things, then you are good as far as the code is concerned. And then you'll get written confirmation of that from us in a few weeks. And again, keep in mind, that is protection for you, right? That if someone were to file a complaint that you have violated the code, the fact that you have disclosed the situation to the Board of Ethics, and you would have our opinion, you would have our opinion that there is not a conflict of interest here, that protects you from complaints against you, at least as far as violations of the Code of Ethics. So, okay, thank you so much for coming. And all right, let's move on then. Who does want to write this one?
I'm not exactly
Lisa, great.
zealous about writing it, but I could write it. My only issue is I've got quite a bit on my plate right now, but I can do my level best to kind of get it out as fast as possible. I just took a lot of notes, so I kind of figured that always makes me sort of guilty as charged.
I'm gonna ask to not write it. My day job's been a little busy recently, and I'm otherwise feeling kind of booked up.
Okay. All right. Well, Lisa, if you don't mind, that would be great. And then, okay, good. I think that's it for the agenda, and we're out of time and we're over. Thank you for staying late. We should probably try to come up with a date for when we could have our next meeting, right? So we're going to have a special meeting, and let's see.
Offer suggestion if the
Sure thing.
if the board likes this time, we could do in 2 weeks, Thursday at the same time. So that would be June 25th, 9 to 11.
That would work for me.
That's not a very good day for me. I've got hearings, lots of hearings.
Okay.
I could do it. Hold on. I could do it next week at this time.
I could do that.
We can do that.
I'm good too.
So that would be the 18th.
Yeah,
Yes.
18th at 9 a.m.
That would work for me as well.
And you guys, about the ombudsman opinions, I'll tell you what I realized after I sent them to Jennifer for her to distribute to you guys. I wrote those, just the first paragraph. You probably, if you looked at it, you might notice that I wrote them almost as if they were a response to a potential notice of violation as opposed to advisory opinion. So I might just tweak that first paragraph and send out a new one to you guys to review of each of those two opinions.
Okay, that would be great.
And-
Thank you.
So the intent for June 18th is to just do the two advisory opinions, Hess and Wink-Pearson. And then do you also want to have Marcia's draft at that meeting? It feels like, sorry, Marcia, feels like you were trying to expedite that one a little bit.
Yeah, if you don't mind, if it's done, right? Because that one, particularly Marcia's, sounded pretty straightforward to me at the end of the day, and so let's at least see if we can't sign off on Marcia's and get that one out. And then Lisa, I know you're busy, so if Lisa's for this taxi cab one, if that's complete, let's at least nominally put it on the agenda. And if it's not done, we'll just push it on. But if it is done, let's look at it and at least bang it out. That should be pretty quick. And then we can.
I think that's probably not happening by next week for me. Just
okay.
So you know. But
well, that's good. In that case, never mind.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of other stuff I have to do for the rest of my job.
Yeah, no worries then. Yeah, in that case, Jennifer, if you don't mind, let's not put it on the agenda then. So the next, our special meeting will just be Marcia's opinion. We'll sign off on that one and get that one pushed out. And then we'll spend the rest of the meeting just finalizing the ombudsman opinion and getting that off our plate.
And then do you also want the potential code revisions for that meeting, since it goes potentially hand in hand with the Hess and Wink-Pearson opinions?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Let's at least put it on there. Because you're right. Yeah, a lot of the opinion discussion might dovetail with code revisions.
Okay.
Can I say code revisions with respect to this issue?
Right. Yeah. So yeah, just the code revisions respect to the ombudsman. The gift loophole we should just reserve for another day.
Okay, understood. And then one last question: does the board want to meet virtually, or do you want to meet in person?
Virtually is better for me.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, and this seemed to work out okay. Were people okay with this? Is my first time using Teams, so this isn't that bad. This seems it's Zoom-like enough that it seems to work. Oh, though I'm just opening I just see that there's a chat room now. Okay, so oh boy, I'm glad people weren't chatting away. Okay, so yeah, I'm sorry. This is my first time, so I'm just learning how to it's Zoom-like enough that I can. I think I can make. I'm okay with this.
Unless we know how to chat, the better off we are.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. All right,
So
good.
if everyone is
They work
liking
great.
the virtual meeting, then I'll go ahead and do your July 9th virtually as well, unless I hear any objections.
No, I think that's right. No, I think this works. This seems fine to me. I mean, it's funny. I was just saying to my wife last night, boy, there's all sorts of meetings like this. We'll never meet live again, right? It's just sort of like, yeah, something I can do this, in my pajamas and, while drinking, a margarita.
So you guys all
and
look, you guys all
What's
look pretty good considering that we're meeting virtually. Jack, you've shaved. I mean, geez, you guys look good.
Yeah. Oh, well, I've got a special filter on mine, so it's actually.
I'm going to put the supermodel filter on mine
Yeah,
next.
it's a.
Yeah,
it
Terry
takes up
blocks out the Bloody Mary whenever he reads it.
That's right. It's like it takes an enormous amount of operational capacity of my computer to do it, but it like digitally re-enhances me and makes me look significantly younger than I actually am. Okay, good. Well, I think that's it then. So we will meet next week at 9 a.m. We'll finish up. We'll sign off on Marcia's thing. Talk about the ombudsman situation, maybe some code revisions as far as that goes. Maybe not. And I think that's it. Thanks for coming today. I appreciate it. We do need more board members, right? And so let's, again, think about people who might be good additions to the board, and let's try to reach out to people because we need two, right? We need two members now. So we're really bad. This is not a good situation in the sense that if any one of us can't make it to a meeting, we don't have a quorum, right? I mean, and so we do need more people. So think about who who would be a good fit, and reach out to them. Okay. All right. Good.
The requirement, you guys, is that someone has to be a resident of the Muni, correct?
I think the only thing that someone has to be a resident of the Muni, and then we have talked a little bit about that people that have just recently left service for the Muni, that we think there should be like a year or two gap before they're back on the Board of Ethics. Just want to avoid, if nothing else, the optics of a revolving door that one day you're, a significant member of the municipality, and the next day, you're on its Board of Ethics reviewing people who 2 weeks ago were your colleagues, or a couple of months ago were your colleagues, right? I mean, we'd like to kind of have at least a little bit of a buffer there as far as that goes. But otherwise, residency municipality, have an interest in, ethics, clean governance, or are good to work with, things like that, right? I mean, and so.
Did we go anywhere with Aisha's application, Dee?
I tried to ask Jason about that, and I think last I talked to him, he thought that he wasn't familiar with receiving it. And I'm pretty sure he did receive it. So actually, Jack, I was going to reach out to you that maybe I should recontact her. I don't know if I have a copy myself. I'm not sure who forwarded it on to Jason.
Okay.
But he, of course, is insanely busy. But if you could help me get another package together that I will forward, and then I can make sure that I can bug Jason. And can do that fairly quickly. And if you would apologize to her, it's really just Jason as chief of staff during this period of time is, very, very obviously full plate.
Yeah.
All right. But it would be good. It didn't really matter all that much since we took a 6-month hiatus, right? I mean, but now that we're back, right, and we should put that back on the front burner.
All right.
Yeah,
I'll
and Jack,
right now.
if you can get that for me, I will definitely get it on the front burner.
Great. All right, everybody. Thanks a lot. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All right. We are hereby adjourned. Let me get my I'm going to use a little gavel. All right. We are adjourned. Thanks for coming, everybody. Stay safe. And good to see you all. My goodness. Yeah.
See everybody.
I know. Good to see you.